I'm John McAteer, editor of the Tirconaill Tribune, based here in Mulford for the past 30 years. Recently we just celebrated that milestone in our career, and for the past year we've been working under very, very difficult conditions with the COVID lockdown. Nevertheless, the paper continues to get printed every single week. Along with me here is Eamon McFadden from Creasla, who has joined us in the past couple of years. What do you make of today's paper, Eamon?
Well, we have, as usual, a good variety of stuff from around our region that we cover. There's a particularly colourful piece on the front there with a lovely aerial shot of Crowan Island and Mulroy Bay. John, what's the story on that?
This is an amazing story, actually. It's from Martin Macaulay. They're a Belfast family, and he wants to put an Airbnb on an island they bought back 20 years ago. His father, a well-known comedian in Belfast called Joe Colley, went out one Saturday morning to buy a car. He arrived back later that afternoon to the astonishment of his wife and family, having bought an island on Mulroy Bay in Donegal, and he never set foot on it for 7 years. But they've hardly ever left it any summer since then.
Aye.
But at this point,
a fine looking place.
It's beautiful, beautiful location. We have this stunning aerial photograph from Jerry Carr. But Martin Colley is attempting to promote tourism in Fanad. He has created his own logos and all this kind of thing, and he's trying to sell Fanad. And amongst one of the people who wants to come there is the legendary George Clark, who does the Amazing Spaces show on Channel 4.
It makes sense if they want to put on a nice wee eco hut type of thing. It's someone like that could give it. Imagine the exposure that would bring.
Well, Fanad would need that, but the council stands in the way because the island has a special status under an EU designation.
Right.
Like in other words, the island is more important than people or the need to create some interesting tourism in Fanad.
There's bound to be a few Craggy Island comparisons.
There'll be more than a few, but Martin is very determined. Martin is a well-known figure himself. He is a sports commentator with the Sean Graham bookmakers chain in Belfast, and he has his eyes set on doing something to promote the island. There's not much point, as he says, of having 16 acres of a floating field and no purpose for it.
A floating field, that's a good way of putting it,
a floating field is what he describes it as.
Good. Suppose that's a bit kind of a more light-hearted story, but there's one obviously sitting next to it here that's a much more serious issue.
Yes, we have this one about ex-priest charged with abuse of children, and a former priest has appeared in court accused of abusing 2 young girls in the 1970s in Donegal, and the charges relate to dates between 1972 and 75. The man, now 85 years of age, was granted bail, and he was charged with 26 counts of indecently assaulting the children at locations in the county close to half a century ago.
Yeah, historical. It's
yeah.
I think that appeared in the district court in Dublin, but that'll be referred back to Donegal here eventually. But obviously,
unfortunately, such incidents are nothing new.
Yeah.
In Donegal headlines over many, many years.
Certainly not in the Tribune. Anyway, the Tribune's had plenty of them over the years.
We've had plenty of those, and they're the ones that you do not want to have, but they're the ones that you cannot ignore, because whoever the 2 girls are, and we have no way of knowing at this point, they deserve justice.
Yeah.
They've obviously suffered a lot for
a long time.
48, 49 years. And let's see, we'll keep an eye on that and see how that one goes. We then go and take a look at our editorial, and it's relating to the government's handling of the vaccine rollout, which has been quite ropey so far, mainly because there's been so many hiccups in the promise of vaccines, delays, failure to honour contracts, and then we've had the issues of clotting with the Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca one. So it's all very, very tedious. We're almost into the end of April now, and we're way behind schedule. We're around 16-17%, whereas in Northern Ireland they're at 46%.
Yeah,
and there's this huge clamour to open up everything, literally. And we're getting in very, very confused messaging from different government leaders, and that is adding to people's woes. Actually, it's creating confusion in people's minds.
And I suppose for the people who want to get the vaccine, they're absolutely raring to go for it if they want to be given that choice to get it as soon as they can.
Absolutely,
it seems quite unusual that they're kind of thinking of reopening before they really have gotten to the stage where more of the population hasn't been vaccinated.
Well, as a leading businessman said to me last night, if we're going to open up, it's going to be for about 4 weeks, and we're going to be back to another Christmas season. Have we not learned any lessons from that?
Yeah.
But that's covered fully in the editorial. Well worth the read. On a much lighter note, we have golfing memories made among friends. This is the history, if you could call it that, of a group called the Muckish Ramblers, who were formed around 1990. And one of our esteemed writers, Paddy McManaman, was part of that legend, and there's a middle page spread in this week's Tribune. Great moments, great crack, and above all, some great golf, allegedly. Paddy McManaman has legends of stories dating back to growing up in Belfast, to being interned in the cages and all of that kind of thing. And he's one of our more popular writers, and you can see why. He's also published a couple of books in the past year, and is probably going to publish a few more.
A lot of familiar faces in that feature today.
Yeah, a lot of familiar faces.
There were some cracks over the years, I'm sure, with the Muckish Ramblers.
But they travelled all over the British Isles. I think they'd on numbers of trips to Spain as well. Unfortunately, as he reflects there, many of his old former colleagues are now long since dead.
Passed away, yeah. But I see plenty of faces that I recognise that are still hale and hearty, kicking around. So it's,
and they're still enjoying golf.
Nice feature, nice to look back on that time.
And they have a golf outing. Well, they didn't have one last year; it had to be postponed. But tentatively this year, there's one set for around September time. Let's hope that might be able to go ahead for them.
Yeah.
And then we visit Rye Bridge down near Rathmullen, where we meet May and Francie McFadden. The McGregors, as they're popularly known, and they're pictured alongside an ancient dresser with the most magnificent collection of willow pattern plates.
Captures a nice picture, doesn't it?
Beautiful, beautiful picture. And although it was not originally planned, the dresser and its precious and historic contents of willow pattern plates and artefacts have seen a few changes. Actually, the dresser, because it's fitted into a particular spot in the kitchen, that when the place was revamped, it was a couple of inches too tight, so they had to relocate it out to the front porch. But it's all the better for that, because it is a magnificent collection. Those, I think, are some of the main stories. We have lots on sport, we have lots of news, lots of features.
Lots of looking back for the 20 years too.
Looking back for the 20 years, and we have this legendary picture of Barney Pat McDade from Glenkira out in Glenswilly, pictured at the local card drive, where he was the champion for the second year in a row. And he's pictured with his nephew Dan. Great memories, great times, because I knew Barney Pat really, really well.
He was a good friend, was he?
He was a good friend. He was a legend, political legend.
Really?
Pipe smoker. And he enjoyed a pint.
See, if you just got into a good chat around election time, would it be?
We often
did. The wee hours.
We often did indeed. Noel McGinley would have been mentored by Barney Pat.
Very good.
Although Noel might want to tell you otherwise. Anything Noel ever learned about politics, which he claims isn't an awful lot, he would have learned from Barney Pat.
Really? He was the man.
Maybe we just leave it at that.
Well, that's it now, because the paper's been printed over in the shed now as we chat.
And
you and Shanna are sitting here revising the first editions off the press.
We'll go over and see how they're getting on.
Keep an eye on them now.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.